My name is Michael Larry, and we're at the Source Climbing Center. This is indoor climbing gym. We opened up in downtown Vancouver in 2011, so we're coming up on our 5th anniversary. So I'm actually a co-owner, and I basically act as a general manager. I think of myself actually a little bit, pretty much the fireman. I'm just the one that's standing back, taking care of everything. So I have to look from that larger view and just make sure that all the systems are working well together. The vision I had for the Source is to be a community kind of place, and climbing is really an interesting sport because it's not like other workouts where you go and you work out on your own and then you just sort of go home. Climbing is the kind of workout where even though it's this individual challenge, it's a social sport and everyone's in this sort of taking these newfound risks together, so there's a lot of camaraderie to it. And we see members of the community who don't climb with us come in just to show other people the place, and I love being that. I love just being a place that people are proud of. It's hard. I'm a new father. I have a 6-month-old and a 2-year-old, and so that's been the biggest challenge. This is the first time in my life where climbing is really hard. And finding that balance between work, family, but then also having your outlet, that's the challenge. I feel a lot of times torn. How much time should I be giving into this? How much should I be giving into my family? And those are really tough decisions to make. The thing I love about climbing, and really what it does for me, is it's just a really stark example of when you can choose when to take your own risk. You really get to take responsibility 100% for yourself. That's the best thing about climbing. It's not safe. Like, that's actually a 4-letter word for us. We never would tell someone this is safe because it is. It's inherently dangerous. So that's what I like about it. Is I like that you can identify there's these risks and these dangers, and then you can make the decision. Am I prepared to take on those risks? And so some of the most proud moments for me in climbing is when I say, no, I don't think I'm up for that. As much as the moments when I say, okay, today I'm ready to commit to that. I'm ready to accept the consequences and I'm gonna do it. And then when you break through and accomplish that, it's brilliant. I've been thinking about like the type of work that I do, how is that reflected sort of in who God is or my relationship with God. And the one thing that came up in my mind that really struck me is I'm here to serve constantly, but I also need to temper serving with the risk that comes with climbing. So, and I haven't figured out a way to articulate it exactly, but what I love about Christ is he's always there to serve, but he also knows sort of when it's like, no, this is a line that I have to establish to serve you better. And that's something that we have to do here because people come in the door as a customer. But sometimes what makes a better experience doesn't mean saying yes to the customer. Sometimes making a better experience is actually educating the customer, like, you're taking on more risk here, you're putting yourself in a dangerous spot, or you're putting other people in a dangerous spot. And you can feel like the bad guy even though you're actually serving them. In the beginning, I came in and I was always ready to serve. Like, I would come in here and this whole place, everything that it was and about, I could just give up to God. Because this is, the reason I have this is because I'm just blessed with so many things. So it was almost like I wasn't responsible for it because this belonged to something way beyond me. Lately it's been hard because as you invest more and more of yourself and you're really giving of yourself, you want ownership with that. And so I don't know if it's ego or this desire for ownership comes in and you start to hold on more tightly to things. And I'm like, oh, I've worked really hard to make this great. And so when someone doesn't appreciate it in the way that I think they should, that's hard. I think it may be a combination of lack of sleep and a lot of other things. But yeah, recently one of the hardest things is the one customer that comes through the door and has an expectation can throw me off. And so then all of a sudden, instead of just thinking, well, how can I love this person and serve them even better? Instead, I start to feel, well, no, I've worked really hard for this and this should be appreciated. And when you see yourself doing that, it's no longer humility. It's like this ego is creeping in and taking over, where you want ownership of something instead of having the humility to give it up.
All right, I'm Ashley Gore, and I'm the owner of Union Hair Lounge. Opened it about a year and a half ago. I've been doing hair for about 10 years now. So been at it for a while, but finally opened up my own business about a year and a half ago. So I'm kind of like, I'm a go-getter. Like I get these ideas and I just want to do it. And so when I got into hair, it's like, well, I want to like do it all. Like I want to be, you know, doing photography, like photo shoots, doing like, you know, professional, just see how high I can get with it. And I moved to LA about, was it 7 years ago or something like that? And I got handed what like kind of the mecca of our industry is, you know, to be a celebrity stylist and be doing, you know, hair for the Grammys and things like that. And I saw it and I realized that's not what I want. I do hair because I love my clients. I do it because I love that my clients get to leave and feel amazing, both inside and out. And there it's very much like, you just better make me look good. Like I'd rather be in Vancouver knowing that I make a difference for people than being in LA just to say I do Adele's hair. People always, my whole life have told me, oh, why aren't you a missionary? Even people who aren't Christians that knew I was a Christian. Realizing that was a really strong point in my life when I was like, my mission field can be here, because I always felt a little guilty. I'm like, why don't I want to go to Africa? And like, why don't I want to, you know, do those things? I love it, and I love that people are doing it, but I just didn't feel that ache for it. And to realize that I could be here in Vancouver and serving in a way that was missional, I think was like just such a huge thing, a huge revelation. I mean, you see, I'm not washing anybody's feet by any means, you know, although I have done pedicures. I have to think first of what they see in the mirror every day. And it's not necessarily what you agree with as someone, as an outsider looking in. But I have to see that they see that, and that it goes deeper than just what they're seeing in the mirror. Either someone's told them something throughout their life, a mother, a father, a bully at school or something like that. They've been told at some point that they look a certain way or they can't do a certain something. And I get a really crazy view of that, because I'll look at them and I'm just like, what? Like, this isn't true. Like, you're being told a lie. Like, I think I see a lot of the truth of people, which I think Christ saw a lot. It wasn't like, I'm going to the best of best. He's going to, the prostitutes and the tax collectors, and he's seeing through what their self is, or I guess, and kind of seeing past all the junk and just really getting to know them, like the raw material of who they are. And I think like something about hair and my industry, like you see the rawness of people, like they completely open. You'd be amazed at what I know about people. I'm an ear, to listen. I mean, I've shared tears with clients, shared super happy moments. I mean, I know everything that's going on in these people's lives. New grandbabies being born, like they get excited. Like, I'm invested in my clients. I try to create a really comfortable atmosphere when I do hair. So just building those relationships with people is probably even more so. I mean, it's fun to do all the hair stuff and it's artistic and creative, but more than anything, I think it's like the relationships I build with my clients. I think when we ignore God, we get stuck in that same haircut, We get stuck with that mom bob that we haven't changed for like 50 years. Let's edit that. We'll start over with a different one. I think it's easy to be be stuck in what you have told yourself, what other people have told you are, and not branch out from that. And when you finally like cut those bangs or change those layers a little bit, you start seeing more and more what you can be, or how change isn't that scary.
My name's Glen Durden. I'm an ultrasound technologist, to use the fancy term, here at Peace Health Southwest. I've been doing ultrasound for about 28 years here, 32 years altogether. Ultrasound is probably the coolest modality of diagnostic imaging. An average or a normal day for me begins at 6:45 in the morning and ends at 3:15. And that's about all that's consistent. I never know when I walk through that door what's going to happen. It's actually part of what I really like about this, because you never get comfortable. You got to think on your feet at all times. We see people almost every day who are distressed. They're here because something's not right, and they're not feeling very good, and they're scared. Well, Christ came, among other things, on a healing ministry to the world. I mean, he came to heal the whole world, but he healed a lot of individual people in the process. And my job is involved in that healing process. Now, it's different from Jesus's. I don't schedule a leper cleansing at 7:30, giving sight to a blind man at 8:15. Healing is not my job, but finding out what's going on so the people who are trained to do the healing will know what to do and how to do it. One of the real difficult parts about my job is the fact that I am not the person who gives the diagnosis, and the person who's lying there and who's afraid or who's in pain. They want to know, and I don't blame them. My job is a bit like the old film strip, where the movie is made up of all of these frames, and I'm one frame. And I don't really know about the physical exam, and I don't really know about the blood work. I know what I'm seeing, but I don't entirely know how it fits in to the whole picture. And so it is actually, in my opinion, acting out the mind of Christ to not give out what could be bad and damaging information. Yes, you're fine. No, you're not fine, and it could be wrong. I try to find a connection, and I try to establish a relationship with these people and express to them the fact that I care. A young woman had come in through the emergency room doors in the evening. She was not doing well. She was abandoned. She had been lured out with promises from the East Coast, and it had all fallen through. She had nowhere to go, and she was very much alone. I did the ultrasound that I was asked to do with this person, but I also had the chance to just speak with her and get to know her and let her get to know me some. I heard her story, and I got the chance to tell her that what had happened to her was wrong, that it shouldn't have happened to her. She's not a bad person that it happened to her. She didn't deserve that to happen to her, and that I felt very badly that it had. Actually even got a chance to pray with her and see the look on her face as she understood someone was saying, "You're not a bad person, you didn't deserve this, this shouldn't have happened to you." And that was one of the most special nights of my life.
My name is Marvin, and I build custom guitars. Boom. Ever since the age of about 15, I thought that I was going to be a professional rock star. And after I got married, shortly after, I had some good momentum with my own record, and I had played professionally for a short bit. I realized that it wasn't the life that I wanted to put a family through. It was a really rough life. And then I was trying to figure out what I was going to do, and I did. I was a youth pastor for a bit, worship pastor. I engineered and produced records. And then I built furniture, did construction, and I did a bunch of things trying to figure out what I was going to do. I had been building guitars since I was 16 years old, been working on them since I was 12, so it was always a love of mine and a hobby. My dad's a woodworker, my brother's a woodworker, so it is just one of my loves always is to do woodworking. So I decided, I'm just going to do it. I got nothing else going on, just do it as a hobby and see what happens. So I started Veritas Guitars in 2010, September of 2010, and boy, I did not realize the difficulty of starting a company and what it would entail and what it kind of brings into your life. It's exciting, it's stressful, it's exhausting. There's a bunch of difficult things while running a company. Building a good product is pretty difficult. Running a successful company is very difficult. Hiring the right guys is extremely difficult. And then keeping your focus on God is incredibly difficult. All of these things, especially when running a business, but running it not just in the Christian world, but also in the secular world as a whole. But there's a lot of things involved in all of this because, I pray over the guitars as I work on them that it would have an effect, that the Lord would use it for His glory and stuff. And it's hard when you don't really see it. You don't see what God's doing all the time. And when you don't see that on a constant day-to-day, mentally you're just like, well, what's the point? Why am I doing this? There's a parable in the Bible that talks about the sheep and the goats. The goats coming before the Lord and saying, look at all that I've done for you. And the Lord says, I don't know you. Get away from me. And the sheep come before the Lord, and the Lord says, hey, thank you for everything you've done for me. And the sheep are like, what? What did I do? So it's a difficult thing because I don't ever want to be a goat in this situation. I don't want to come before the Lord and be like, look at this company that I have created for you, God. Look at how great I am. Look at what I've done for the kingdom. But the simplicity of it is, in everything that I do, I try and be as much like Christ, knowing that I'm going to fail and fall short. I had one guy call me for this. He's like, your guitars will be the only guitars I will ever own ever again. And I was just like, well, that was nice of him to say, And he said, I don't know what it is, but there's something about your guitars that I just feel like the Lord just moves through it. It inspires me to want to worship, inspires me to want to be better. He's like, but there's something, your guitars are the only ones that have ever given me that. As an artist or any kind of, anyone who creates anything, it's very precious to you. It's a piece of you. And, for me, these aren't just guitars. They're works of art. It's tools of worship. And, David in Psalms talks about, in worship, you need to basically give it your all. And this is a form of worship, to look at not just at, what you do as a career, but as your entire life. Every little thing that you do, if you can give it back to God, He'll consider it worship.
My name's Kayla Paisley, and I am a deputy prosecuting attorney for Clark County. I've been a criminal prosecutor for almost 3 years. Before that, I was a child protection lawyer for 5 years on an Indian reservation in Montana. I did child protection for the tribe on their on-reservation dependency and neglect, as well as their off-reservation. And I decided to switch to criminal law after one of the children that we had placed in foster care, Jaron, was murdered by his foster parent. And when that happened, the criminal side of it, I didn't feel like justice was served. I was frustrated by that, and I decided that part of justice for victims wasn't just keeping offenders away from the children, but rather holding them accountable, and I decided to switch to criminal law. Unlike a lot of other states, we don't have a grand jury system. Ultimately, the prosecutor is the one who decides what charges to bring forward, and we use our own discretion in that, what we think we can prove beyond a reasonable doubt. Sometimes it's the same as what the law enforcement officer arrested them for. Sometimes it's different. Sometimes there are additional charges that we want to pursue based on the reports that we have, and so we make those charging decisions. When I think through looking to the interests of others above myself, and as in Philippians, there are a lot of different interests at stake in a criminal case. I represent the state. What does that mean as society? There's a victim. I prosecute property crimes. I currently am the car czar. I prosecute exclusively car theft. Somebody's car was stolen. There are impacts on that person's life. They can't get to their job. And often the impacts on that person continue, because even after we found the car with the defendant in it, it gets impounded, and then the victim can't pay to get the car out of impound, and they lose that. They're completely out. And so there's their interests and how do we protect them, but there's also the defendant. In property crimes, 90%, probably more than that, are drug related. These aren't, this isn't Fast and the Furious or what's that, Gone in 60 Seconds, stealing these cars for, profit or as a job. Sometimes that happens, but most of the time, these are young men and women on the streets who have a drug addiction, who consider it sort of their Uber. They just go and take a Honda because they needed to get to an appointment in Longview. They're not thinking about the impact on others. And so, you have to look at where they're at in their drug addiction. And so trying to put, their interests as far as holding them accountable, but trying to get them the treatment that they need, to move forward with their life so that they don't continue back in the criminal justice system. When I see a defendant here who's committed crimes and who's hurt other people, I still see them as a child of God and recognize that. They aren't just a criminal to me. They are a person that has a story, and so I try and embody that in the way that I speak about them. I look them in the eye. I treat them with dignity. I recently prosecuted somebody and sent him to the drug offender sentencing alternative. He's 41 rather. He had done drugs since he was 6 years old. When he was 6, his parents, his mom, and the men that she had in the house would smoke marijuana, and rather than hand the joint to the next person, they would give it to the kid to deliver, and he would take puffs and they would all laugh. What future did he have? He was set up for criminal behavior from such a young age. As far as embodying Christ and really, the kenosis, with him becoming man, in the same way I try and put myself in the defendant's shoes, and understand how they came to be here, and that allows me to have empathy for who they are and what they're doing. So we have some drug offender sentencing alternatives that I look to a lot, and perhaps more than a lot of prosecutors. I am considering that defendant as a human being who oftentimes has a tragic story. There's some prosecutors that would just see the offender score, just see how many felonies this guy has committed, and just send him to prison for the maximum amount of time. In this particular case, I asked victims, what are your thoughts on this drug offender sentencing alternative? And that's what I asked the court for. I said, I want him to have this shot. I don't know if he's gonna take it. I don't know if he can be successful on it, but I want to see if he can, and I want to give him that shot.